Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we've got a top 10 list of hype decks going into 2023. We already have a ton of stuff revealed as far as what's coming in 2023. We're talking about Photon Hypernova. We're talking about early reveals for Cyberstorm Access. We'll get the deck build pack from Wild Survivors later. We'll get the full reveals for like the Gold Pride archetype. But for right now, I've got a lot of stuff revealed. So just going into the year, anybody who's looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! Going for 2023, here's a list of 10 like decks that I think are super hype going into the year. Some of these are going to be meta relevant. Some of these are going to be more rogue stuff. But nonetheless, all really exciting in their own way. To me, this is my list, by the way, so keep that in mind. There's going to be a couple things I left off here that some people are definitely going to disagree with. Feel free to let me know in the comments section down below anything that wasn't on my list that you think could have easily been on this list, as well as just what your thing that you're most excited for if you had to pick one would be. But let's get into it with a couple of honorable mentions. Honorable mentions to Abyss Actors. I think the new support is cool. I think their deck can actually play on a rogue level, but it's pure. It doesn't really splash with other stuff, but it's still interesting, and I have another Pendulum archetype on here. And then also Evil Eye. I really like the Evil Eye support. I think it's actually like an interesting rogue deck, but if Bestials do not get hit super hard on the ban list, Bestials kind of hurt this deck a good bit and lower the ceiling of it. But its support is still good, still worth mentioning as an honorable mention. So let's get into the actual list here, starting off with number 10 on the list, Kashtira. I know what you're saying is like, John, what? Kashtira number 10? Are you crazy? These are more in order of how excited I am for them. Listen, I think the Kashtira stuff is cool that they go from being like just a little splashable engine into like a full-on archetype that can do its own thing and stuff. But it's still pretty anti-meta. It relies on the macrocosmos effects of the world to kind of stun out the meta decks in the game. But it's still cool, and I'm excited because it's a new meta-relevant archetype. It's going to change up the format a little bit, and I'm just excited more for the change than I am to actually play around with this deck, to be honest. So that's why it ends up number 10 for me. Moving on to number 9, we have the new Monodome archetype. Another cool one, but this one's also weird for me because while I like what I see so far from the archetype, definitely doesn't feel like it's there. Definitely not there yet. At best, it's rogue for me. We'll probably have to see what the next core set has as follow-up support. I mean, look at Kashtira. It came out, at best, just a little splashable engine, and then it becomes a full-on meta-relevant archetype. We'll see what the next wave has for Monodome. But still cool. Cool synchro-based archetype. First synchro-based one from the Visa Starfrost lore, and hopefully they get a good follow-up wave. But still some cool stuff to start. Moving on to number 8 on the list, we have Labyrinth. You guys know I'm a huge fan of Labyrinth. The reason it's actually a little higher on the list for me instead of lower down near the top 3 or anything is because they're only getting one new card in Photon Hypernova. That being said, it's a very good card for them, but it's one card. You know, the deck still does a lot of what it does. It just... the engine is bigger, the engine is more consistent and flexible in what it's able to get you, and because of that, this card is very nice for them. It's just not... it's not rewriting how good the archetype is. The archetype's already solid. This just makes it a little more solid, so 8 for me. Still excited, but, you know, it's not taking the deck from bad to amazing. It's taking the deck from good to even a little more good. So, yeah, number 8. Down to number 7, we've got Generator on here. I'm actually very excited for this. They get 2 new cards. I don't think they needed the Extract Monster. It's a nice piece, and we'll definitely take it, but the big one here is the main deck monster, really helping with the brick factor of the deck. The deck has always struggled with being bricky throughout its history. And I'm actually excited to mess around with like some pure variants, maybe splash in some other engines as well, see what we can do there. But it's definitely a deck that I've always really liked, other than the brickness of playing all the boss monsters. But other than that, still a really cool archetype. Excited to get into it. Photon Hypernova will have this deck up and running. I'll definitely have a profile on this one when it comes. Next up here we have Super Heavy Samurai. I know I made my video kind of crapping on the Super Heavy Samurai support. Pretty much I was just saying, like, why them? They have like 40 cards of support in their archetype, and Konami gives them like 7 more. There's just so many archetypes that feel like they should get support before Super Heavy Samurai. But here's the thing. Not only is this good for anybody who likes Super Heavy Samurai, that is not me. I'm more excited for this as just a generic Pendulum Engine. This card by itself for Zephyra is like one card, like full combo for Zephyra. That's what I'm more excited for. Its consistency, its power for other Pendulum decks. You just get a ton of value off of it, and I'm more excited for that. So, to be honest, that's just where I'm at with that. So, yeah. Yeah. Moving on. I believe we're in the top 5 now. This is Mikonko, brand new archetype coming in Amazing Defenders, which is actually the deck build pack for the TCG early, or not, I guess like mid to late January. This is a cool archetype. It's based around equip spells that give you good value. It's also a ritual archetype with a pretty good ritual monster. They do some cool things, and because they're equip based, they also have synergy with stuff like Infernoble Knights. One of their monsters is a fire warrior, so there's definitely some good synergy there. But we'll have to see where they end up. Also, they have a decent 2 cards of support in Cyberstorm Access as well. We'll see where we can go with everything kind of put together. But I think it has some good potential. We've seen it already in the OCG have a little bit of splashability in other decks and be able to at least be a rogue deck that can perform with the top decks running around there. But I think we're in a good spot. I think it's a cool deck. I'm definitely excited to mess around with them. I'll definitely be picking up this one for sure. Number 4, Springins. Springins, man. Who would have thought I'd be saying Springins here? Shout out to Yassine, by the way. He just released a video pretty much showing off some really high ceiling, like 1.5 card Springin combos. Not exactly sure what engine I'm going to splash in here, but the Therians are interesting. The sprites are interesting. There's a handful of other stuff you can do too. But man, this new Exceed monster and the quick play spell are both like insane for the deck. Like no joke, they are legit insane cards. Very excited to get moving with this deck. Springins, I had talked about for a long time, saying like why. As far as like the Albaz Ecclesia lore went, like every archetype was solid except for Springins, and I guess Ice Jade too. But I'm sure Ice Jade will get its second coming like a little bit down the road. But Springins got absolutely like dogged by Konami, and I'm glad they did him right. 2 years later, that's really good on them. So shout out to the support. This support's crazy. Next up, Pearly. This is top 3, I believe. Pearly number 3 for me. I'm actually really excited about this archetype. To me, it's almost like a modern day Zodiac. Not in the sense of like Zodiac back when it was 2017 and it was unquestioned like the best deck in the game, tier 0 format, stuff like that. But more so as like a really easy Zeus-based deck from like 2020 where the deck was just really easily able to churn into Zeus's. This deck's kind of like that, except like every quick play is kind of just an emergency teleport. The new monster is really good, as well as they got a new spell. I'm sure they'll get a new extra deck monster down the line, if not 2, because I don't think they have a fire attribute one. And they need one to correspond at least to the new quick play spell. So we'll see what happens there. But they have an insane boss monster that becomes like a towers and also like a once per turn quick effect to just like put cards back from your opponent's field or grave like back into the deck. Absolutely insane on that card. And a bunch of utility elsewhere. There's no restrictions on the archetype, so you can splash other stuff as well. Really, really interesting archetype that I can't wait to mess around with. This is another one from Amazing Defenders right alongside of Mikonko. Shout out to Rescue Ace, by the way. If you like them, I think they're cool aesthetically, but they're not good. Konami needs to give them like a big old strong wave come Dueling Nexus. Hopefully that'll take him to the next level. Or Duelist Nexus? I think it's Duelist Nexus. Alright, top 2. Number 2, Teller Knights. Listen, you guys know I've been screaming from the top of my lungs for 2 years about Teller Knights. This was the archetype I felt more than any other archetype kind of deserved to get a modern wave of support. I thought it made sense for the player base. I thought it made sense for Konami to try and make money because a lot of people love this archetype. And yeah, they got a good wave. They're really cool. There's definitely nitpicky things I could say about the support, but I do think all things considered, this will be a rogue deck at worst. And I'm very excited to mess around with them. They have some very powerful combos now. They're not as control-oriented as they used to be, but still a very cool deck nonetheless. And I'm very excited to mess around with their new support when it comes in Cyberstorm Access. Which takes us to number 1 on the list. It's Trap Tricks, baby. They get a whole structure deck. Listen, all these new archetypes, all these new whatevers. This was already like a respectable archetype, and it got a structure deck. That is where you want to be. Let me tell you guys, if you love an archetype and you're going to pray for support, the best thing that can happen for your favorite deck is get a structure deck, because you get 8 new cards in it, and because it's a structure deck, the whole product is contingent on how good this new support is. Like, if the new support isn't good, like, nobody cares about the structure deck. It won't sell well. So Konami is so incentivized, because it's so based on that, to make it good support. I think Trap Tricks is at worst a really, really strong rogue deck. Could be a tier 2 deck. I even think there's a world where, depending on how much they decimate the top decks, Trap Tricks could even potentially find itself even around tier 1 come the new format after, you know, a ban list. So we'll see. Very, very strong deck. Very excited for a lot of these decks. Probably like 8 or 9 out of the 10 decks here I am planning to build and planning to make deck profiles, including them, and maybe even multiple depending on you know, some of them. And it's just a really exciting time looking at these products. I think we're going to get Amazing Defenders, which has some cool stuff. Like I said, I'm excited for Mikonko. I'm excited for Pearly. But once we hit Photon Hypernova, that's when things really feel like they're going to start kicking off for 2023. We should get a ban list around that time, and we should be in a really, really good spot. So that's kind of where I'm looking right now. You know, kind of like a month and a half, a little bit less than that away. But, man, once we get there, it's going to be so, so clean. So yeah, these are the 10 archetypes I'm most excited for going into 2023. Like I said at the beginning of the video, let me know your thoughts down below. What are you most excited for? What did I leave off this list that should have been on there, in your opinion? And yeah, that's it for me here. Subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.